This is the bivariate assignment by Carthage 2012, Paul 242, entitled American Hostility Towards China. What factors affect the average American's hostility towards China? Is it age? Will older Americans be more hostile to a communist country like China? Is it perception of relations between the two countries? Or is it how Americans view China's role in Asia? To answer these questions, I used dataset CCFR 2006 USA, and my analysis includes alpha, tau b, and c, chi-square, and cross tabulation. In regards to age, I believe that older Americans who remember the Cold War will likely take a more hostile stance towards China. In terms of relations, I believe that if Americans believe that there is a degradation in relations between the two countries, that they will likely take a more hawkish or hostile stance. In terms of China's role in Asia, the U.S. has had a history of intervention in the region, and as China grows stronger militarily, economically, and politically, if Americans see them as playing a negative role, I believe that they will take a more hostile stance towards them. For academic guidance, I consulted the works of Gries and Croson, who explored the relation between political ideology and Americans' attitudes towards China, as well as the Xinhua news agency's survey of Americans and their attitudes towards China. I constructed a hostility index which asked Americans how much they trust China to keep their commitments, asked them to rank their feelings toward the Chinese, and asked them how much influence they would like to see China have in the world. This rendered me an alpha score of 0.6441, which is past the threshold for an alpha score. So I recoded the index to a value scale of 1 to 3, 1 being weak, 2 being mild, and 3 being heavy hostility. As you can tell by the measurements and below, this rendered me a fairly even index. Firstly, I hypothesize an increase in age will positively correspond with an increased hostility towards China. My null hypothesis is that there is no relationship between the two. Secondly, I hypothesize that an opinion that the U.S.-China relations are degrading will positively correspond with an increased hostility towards China. My null hypothesis is that there is no relationship between the two. Thirdly, I hypothesize that a lower opinion of China's role in Asia will correspond positively with an increased hostility towards China. My null hypothesis, again, is that there is no relationship between the two. Hostility towards China tends to be fairly even across age groups. My Pearson score has ruled out the null hypothesis, but I was given a tau c score of 0.1039, which is considered fairly weak. Perception of U.S.-China relations has rendered me a moderately strong tau b score of 0.25042, and my Pearson score has ruled out the null hypothesis. As you can see from the chart here, a belief that there is improving U.S.-China relations tends to mean that respondents have weak hostility towards China. On the other hand, those that believe relations are worsening tend to have stronger hostility. You also notice that the middle score tends to be fairly even. American perception of China's role in Asia has rendered me a tau c score of 0.30815, which is considered strong. The Pearson score rules out the null hypothesis, and upon looking at the chart you can see quite coherently that the more negatively someone views China's role in Asia, the more likely they are to have strong hostility towards them. In summary, age was not a factor in determining hostility towards China, but perception of U.S.-China relations was, and so was perceptions of China's role in Asia. All independent variables ruled out the null hypothesis, and the fact that I had a smaller amount of cases to work with in this survey makes that more reflective. For the purposes of research, one might want to consider updating the survey information on American attitudes towards China. The survey I used was over 6 years old, and very many things may have changed, like hostilities increasing or decreasing, or there are other factors that may be more important to such analysis. Also, quite possibly the view of how Americans view themselves in the world might have changed, and as well might have changed how they respond to China. For further research, one might want to consider how the media affects Americans' opinions of other countries, as well as one might want to consider research in the real-world effects of American hostilities towards China, and what kind of consequences American views towards other countries have in real-world outcomes. Thank you.